Indian auto is going through one of its most rough patches in recent history. Take Maruti, for example. The giant posted its sharpest monthly drop in a decade for July. Its mainstay, the entry-level hatchback segment, also cracked, with sales falling by more than 30%. That's prompted the editor of Autocar India, Hormazd Sorabjee, to call it a fast down and not a slowdown. Joining us now to explain what he means by it is the man himself. Hormazd, thanks so much for taking the time out. Now, how does this slowdown, look to you? Does it sound and smell very different when you're saying that it's a fast down and not a slowdown?
All the factors are there. Of course, I think one of the big ones is there's a liquidity crunch. Dealer funding is an issue. So, for them to, pick up stock, all that is a problem. The sentiment is weak. All that is there. But, I've seen this happen we've seen this happen in 2008, when there was the global financial meltdown. And, clearly, I just didn't see the, how do I say, that this sentiment seems to be deeper, more deep-rooted, and we've just got the July numbers, and it's just scary. The market seems to be in absolute free fall. So, mine is, to be honest, just a hunch. It's from the feedback we get from our readers, our audience. Somehow the love affair with the car is not as strong as it used to be, especially with the millennials or the Uber generation, where I find that, it's not so much of a priority buying a car. They've got other priorities where to spend their money. They like to be a little asset light. I think they even looking at renting rather than buying houses. Same goes with cars. They want to spend their money on experiences and other things. And I think, the desire to buy a car I think there's been a structural shift in the market. I mean, it's just a hunch. It's not based on any hard data, which, a lot of manufacturers have, because they are constantly, they are absolutely in the thick of it. But just the kind of feedback we get and the sense we get is, the love affair with the car is not as strong as it used to be.
But I have a counter to that, Hormazd. Millennials have been here for a while. Why is it that there's this sudden drop down over the last 6-9 months? Surely it can't be attributed only to millennials.
Well, I think it's more than that. I mean, if you see it, it started a long time back. And, honestly, I think, frankly, this goes back towards demonetization. I think after that, there's been some uptick. Some companies have done well, Maruti's done well, some other brands haven't. I think that pace of growth which was there, it's not been at its absolute peak. Obviously, there's a bit of saturation in the market. There's a little bit of maturity, but, people are also hanging on to their cars longer. So I don't think it's sudden. I mean, 9 months is sudden in the grander scheme of things, and just looking at the general way the industry, the long lead times they have. But I think this has started a long time back, and it's really, we're feeling it right now. And, I think there's a change in sentiment, and probably what is accelerating that are the general macroeconomic conditions as well. So combination of everything, but I think structurally, even when we've got no headwinds economically, I think perhaps the days of double-digit growth, may not be there. And I think industry has to now adjust to a new norm.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. So we are saying that there is not going to be a V-shaped recovery, which is fine. But would lower highs in volumes be a real thing for four-wheelers, even if the recovery were to happen at some point of time?
That is a safe assumption, and also let's not forget the cost of car ownership is going to go up dramatically, because we are getting into an era of BS6 emission norms. Also, there is a lot of uncertainty around the current technology with all this electrification. People are also wondering that if I buy a car now, after 5 years, will it be obsolete? So, it's there's a lot of other issues surrounding car ownership. And I think, with all this, I think consumers are saying, hey, look, I don't need a new car right now. I can either make do with shared mobility, or the car I've got, it's serving my purpose. And let's see what pans out in terms of regulation and technology. And the fact that, there's all this kind of flip-flop in you have to have EVs by tomorrow, and then you can get it in by a phased manner. All that, there's no clarity on that. Obviously, that's a bigger worry for the industry because they have to make the huge investments. But even from a consumer standpoint, he is investing in certain technology which he doesn't know will be valid or even legal after a couple of years. So you never know. I mean, there might be a case when people ban authorities ban IC engines from city centers. All these are genuine worries for the consumer, and it's not helping, let's say, the demand situation.
Okay, now let's talk about this bounce as and when it happens, or a recovery whenever it happens. What will move up faster? Will it be small cars? Would it be mid-sized cars? Because usually what happens when you compare cars and staples, the creamy layer does well, the bottom layer typically does well because demand is there. It's the mid-sized pocket which doesn't do well. Would that happen in cars too this time around when the bounce happens?
No, I don't think you can dissect the market in that way, to be honest. I mean, look, the luxury market has its own issues. What we have seen is huge cost escalation. Clearly, the luxury car market is not being supported fiscally. It's getting more and more expensive. Even right now, parts on CKD, has gone up, but the duties have gone up by around 5%. So we've been seeing this kind of, let's say, uptick in prices, which frankly, at some point, Indians, however rich they are, seeing certain value, may want to settle for something a segment below. And we are seeing that is happening right now. Whereas at the bottom end, I think, you will find that as there's more maturity amongst the car buyer and more car ownership, they might want to jump a little ahead from what is basic and cheap transport, because at the end, at a base level, cars are also aspirational, and they would rather wait and get something a little bit more substantial than the absolutely bare bones, let's say, products out there. And if you see, the bottom end of the market has also shrunk. The center of gravity is slightly upwards. It's more in the 5 to 8 lakh range. That's where really is the heart of the market. And you're going to see a lot more choice coming in there as well, because the bottom of the market is only served by a handful of models from Maruti. The barriers to enter that space are very, very high. Most other manufacturers have kind of given up on that. So it's just Maruti. So, there's not that much choice available as well. So I still think the sweet spot eventually will be around the 10 lakh mark from a growth point of view. And I think that's really where everyone is focusing, their action on. And even from a manufacturer's point of view, that's a place where margins are a little better vis-a-vis the volumes. And, I think it's not a big red ocean where you make a lot of losses. So I think, the industry is going to be focusing on that part of the market, and that's what's going to be driving growth.
Okay, what about two-wheelers, Hormazd? The numbers are looking drastically lower for them as well. Do you think that whenever they bounce back, the new normal will be way lower than what the numbers are right now?
I think as two-wheelers, the same kind of situation applies. In fact, two-wheelers are much more cost sensitive. So things like registration going up. We even had the impact of insurance, which had to be paid up front for a couple of years, and that really pushed the price of the two-wheelers up. That had a huge impact. And of course, there's the cost of fuel as well. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we've seen a slight decline in demand in scooters, because they're not as fuel efficient as motorcycles. So a lot more cost sensitive for sure is the two-wheeler market. And what we're going to see in the move to BS6, a lot of them are moving to fuel injection. That in itself is going to take the cost up, and even maintenance costs up a bit. So again, the outlook not great, and I think overall the industry is going to have to adjust to a new normal in terms of volumes and demand.
Okay, Hormazd, just one last question. For the industry at large, I mean, the one thing that's happening is that people may be brand conscious but are not necessarily brand loyal. Do you think that the days of people being very, very attached to a Maruti and a Hyundai in the four-wheeler segment is a thing of the past? Because it's evident in the newer responses, MG Hector and the Kia motor sales and the responses, they're very strong. Maybe Ather Energy is doing very well too in the EV segment. So the loyalty towards the incumbents may not be as strong from the millennial side. Would that happen?
Well, look, that may be in the short term. You talk about Ather. Look, this is a very, very small base. I wouldn't even consider them as, let's say, a potent two-wheeler player going forward, just given the volumes that they are doing. And frankly, that's a problem with EVs. The numbers are just minuscule. The noise is a lot more. So I think really a long way to go. MG Hector, yes, very encouraging response. In fact, in July, they probably outsold most of their competitors in its first month, which is fantastic. Again, it goes to show there's no fear of the unknown or fear of the unknown brand. People are willing to try it more, but again, it depends on the segments. I mean, SUV buyers are more adventurous, more open to trying out new brands, less so than, let's say, at the budget end, where people would rather go with a tried and tested Maruti or maybe a Hyundai. But, so it really depends on the segment where you are focusing. So for argument's sake, if MG were to come out with a hatchback, I doubt they'd make a dent on Maruti, because that people are a lot more risk averse over there. And that's where I think long-term distribution will play a role, not from the point of reach, but it will be from the quality of service.
Okay, Hormazd, we'll leave it at that. Thanks much for taking the time out and being with us today and giving us your thoughts. That's a complete auto segment, really, if you wanted a lowdown. CVs, cars, two-wheelers, all done. All of them down in the session today. The market's down in the session today. It's a wrap on this leg of Indian Open. Up next is the FNO show. Stay tuned to Bloomberg Quinn Live.